Let's talk now about confidence intervals, and you'll recall that in our last episode we had taken Bootstrap samples from a data set of used Toyota prices, prices in euros. And here, just to recap, we have the result of one resample, and that resample had an average value of 18,205 euros. And of course, the idea of resampling is that you repeat this over and over and over again in a Bootstrap. And I've done it here 1,000 times, and in column A we've got them ranked from smallest to largest. You can only see the first 15 here. The smallest resample mean was 15,280, but even we saw from the first slide that it could be over close to 19,000 at the upper end. And we'll come back to these percentiles here in just a moment. Here's a histogram of all those resample means, running from all the way from down around 15,500 up to just shy of 20,000. And what we're going to do for a confidence interval is simply chop off a certain percentage at the top and at the bottom, and that will be the endpoints of what's called a confidence interval, meaning that X%, where X is the leftover percent after you've done the chopping off of the resample results, lie in between. So we've already calculated the top percent and the top 5% and the bottom 5%. The fifth percentile at the bottom is at 16,415 euros, and the percentile at the 95th percentile is 18,860. So in between those two values is our confidence interval, and you can see it applied back to the histogram. 90% of our resample results fall between 16,415 and 18,860. That's a result of chopping off 5% at each end. So that's what's called a 90% confidence interval. We could have chopped off a smaller amount at each end, and we would have a 95% interval or a 99% interval. And basically the interpretation of this is that our sampling procedure will yield a mean or some other sample statistic in that interval 90% of the time. And we did it via a resampling procedure, so you see the actual results here from the resampling. You may have seen in other statistics texts the more formal, more theoretical, normal bell-shaped curve, in which we're doing the same thing, chopping off, in this case, 5% at either end and leaving 90% in the middle. They are two different ways to arrive at a confidence interval, slightly different, but the basic idea is the same. You want to determine where sample results lie with some sort of interval specification if you do a resampling procedure, or if you calculate based on formulas an approximation to where they should be falling.